So for my sourdough starter, I'm going to use organic strong wholemeal bread flour and tap water. So I've got equal volumes of water and flour, 1 glass of each. I've weighed them, and actually the water weighs twice as much as the flour. But I'm going to go on equal volumes rather than equal weights for this experiment. So I'm just going to mix them together in the bowl. So that's a nice consistency now. And what I'm going to do is just cover it with a tea towel. And I'm going to go and put that on a shelf in the warm now and leave it overnight. It's been 24 hours now. It's just been sat on this shelf, which is over a radiator, but the radiator hasn't been on all the time. Let's give it a smell. It doesn't smell fermented, but I guess it's time to feed it. So no bubbles at all, but it has been quite cold. I don't think I'm not sure if you should expect any bubbles on the first day. There might be something going on, but it's just not visible. Anyway, time to feed it. So I'm using a glass of water, tap water that's been stood overnight, and a glass of whole wheat flour, organic whole wheat flour. Okay, I'm going to cover that again, put it back on the shelf, and maybe feed it in another 12 hours rather than 24 hours. We'll see. So this is 12 hours later. Doesn't look like there's many bubbles. I'm not feeding it this time, I'm just going to give it a stir. Oh, there's a few bubbles appearing. It frothed up when I stirred it. It sort of went bubbly, so it doesn't smell yeasty really. But that's a bit more promising. So cover it up again and leave it for a bit longer. Also, I've got it on this, because it's winter, it's quite cold, I've got it on this vivarium heater, which is a thing you get for heating reptile tanks or fish tanks, I think. I'm not sure about fish tanks. Okay, time to feed the starter again. It's not looking very lively. It smells a bit more promising than it did. So what I'm going to do this time is throw some of it away. So this is the second feeding of my starter. I've thrown more than half the original away, and I'm adding equal amounts of flour and tap water that's been stood overnight. Grow, yeast, grow. Fed and mixed. 12 hours later, I give it an early morning stir. Oh, what a mess. That's what happens when you try and stir your sourdough starter while holding a video camera in one hand. It's looking frothier now. Still just smells like wet flour really, doesn't smell yeasty. So this is before the third feeding. See the water flour and water sort of separated. There's not many bubbles still, and it smells a bit yeasty, slightly. I don't know if I'm imagining that or not. Anyway, third feed, I'm going to mix it up, get rid of half, and then I'm going away for the weekend, so I'm going to feed it, but add more flour than usual. Because Sandor Katz, the guru of fermentation, who wrote this book, The Art of Fermentation, which I was reading last night, recommends making the mixture a bit drier if you're going to store it in the fridge for any amount of time. So I'm going to follow his advice and then continue the feeding and the fermentation when I get back after the weekend. So this time I've poured quite a lot of the mixture away. And this time I'm going to add 1 cup of flour to half a cup of water, so it will be a bit less moist than before. So that's a lot thicker than it was before. So I'm going to leave that on the shelf for a couple of hours, and then when I leave for the weekend I'll put it in the fridge and then resurrect it, hopefully when I get back from the weekend. So here's the starter. It's been in the fridge longer than I've been planning. I went away for 3 days. I went away for the weekend, and I've just taken this out of the fridge. It's been in there for 3 days because I didn't get around to taking it out yesterday. So I'm just going to let it get to room temperature, and then I'm going to feed it again. One bubble, or maybe one big bubble. It smells like wet flour. It's actually, what day is it? Thursday. I haven't managed to feed it since I got it out of the fridge on Monday. So it's just been stood here. It's just wet flour. I don't think it's doing anything. Anyway, I'll feed it again. And yeah, I've just been too busy to feed it. I don't think it's doing anything. I think it's just wet flour. I might have to start again. Well, I've got rid of quite a lot of it. Actually, I've got rid of most of it. There's only left that bit. Well, it's starting again, really. Here goes. So that's nice and mixed up now. Let's put it back on the shelf. It looks a bit dried out. I've had the heater on. Fed again. So finally it's bubbling. This is about 6 hours after feeding it, and thinking I was just wasting my time and making more wet flour. This does look like it's alive. So let's give it a smell. It does smell sort of yeasty, but not a lot different to how it smelt before when I thought it wasn't working. So maybe, I have got a cold. I have had a cold for a week, so maybe I'm just not smelling it very well. That's probably the reason, because it's definitely working now. There are lots of bubbles after waiting about a week for it to get started. Get that, nice and bubbly. Time for feeding again. Yeah, it's really lively now. It's smelling yeasty. So I've put half of it in a jug. I want to try and make some savoury pancakes with this stuff rather than throw it away, which is what I usually do. But anyway, I'm going to feed the remaining half again, as usual. And this is just about 12 hours after the last feed, rather than 24 hours. Because in the stuff that I've read, it does say between 12 and 24 hours, so it's quite lively, and I just want to keep the momentum up. Feeding time. This is some of the sourdough that I've discarded, and there is, I can't read it, got 220 millilitres of sourdough, so I'm going to crack a couple of eggs in there and then try and make some savoury pancakes out of them. Sourdough mixture with 2 large eggs cracked into it. Savoury pancake made from sourdough with guacamole and salad. It's really yeasty now. Positively fizzing. Feeding, 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 feeding. Fizzy sourdough. 22 degrees. Fizzing. Very fizzy. It really smells strong now. It really smells yeasty. And it's all fizzy. So the time has come to use my starter to make some bread. It's really, really active now. It's really fizzy. And it smells like alcohol. It really does smell alcoholic. It's been going for about 3 weeks. I just haven't had time to make the bread. It's quite liquid. It's quite runny.